Welcome back to U.S. history. This is Roman numeral 3. Yes, it's just a date, 1968. One of the things, or let me just let you know, this is the last video that you'll be doing for week 7. Plans will probably be that you'll have 2 videos that you'll need to do for next week, as well as taking the chapter 24 test. So hopefully you'll be able to do that. Again, if you have any questions about what to do, what to plan for, you can always email me or Skype me, and we'll be good to go. 1968 was a very, very bad year. This whole period of violence, radicalism, and conflict that we see experienced between 1963 and 73 climaxed in the year 1968. Also, you need to know that 1968 was an election year. The fact of the matter was that Lyndon Johnson, remember, he had become president in 63, re-elected in 64. Because he had served less than half of Kennedy's term in office, he was up for renomination during this time. He could have run again. And the question was, will he? The answer is no. Letter A, Johnson bows out. Even though he would have been poised to win the Democratic nomination in the election of 1968, he had become increasingly unpopular. The Tet Offensive in Vietnam and stronger opposition than expected led Johnson to choose not to run again. He said, "I've concluded that I should not permit the presidency to become involved in the partisan divisions that are developing in this political year. Accordingly, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president." His dropping out of the race opened wide the opportunity for other candidates. The following individuals I'm about to mention are all Democrats who will now seek the Democratic nomination to run for president. Eugene McCarthy was an anti-war Democrat who had initially opposed Johnson. That's what you need to know about him. Another Democrat was Robert Kennedy. You need to know that he is or was the younger brother of JFK. He also ran as an anti-war Democrat. And then the third Democrat running was Johnson's vice president, Hubert H. Humphrey. He generally represented Johnson's positions. So 2 anti-war Democrats and the vice president running for the nomination. Humphrey believed that he could win the nomination through the delegates in the non-primary states. Let me explain this real quickly. In order for you to win the nomination, you have to get a certain number of delegates and then get those delegates in the national convention to vote for you. Today, most primaries and caucuses that take place in the U.S., they're done by popular vote. You have the primaries taking place like in Florida or wherever, and you vote for your nominee, and whoever gets the most votes in Florida gets Florida's primary delegates. That's not how it used to work. Back in 1968, some of the states were doing what I just described. Other states, they had party leaders, party legislatures who would just dictate the winner of the state's delegates. Well, Humphrey's plan was to win enough of those delegates, the non-popular delegates, and that would get him the nomination. McCarthy and Kennedy decided to compete with each other for control over the popular delegates, and hoping that they would have enough support to go up against Humphrey in the Chicago National Convention. That was the plan. Well, plans change. Letter B, 2 tragedies took place in 1968. Lots of tragedies did, but especially these 2. In April 1968, in Memphis, Martin Luther King was assassinated while standing on the balcony of his motel. He had gone to Memphis, Tennessee to support a strike by garbage workers. His death sparked a new wave of urban violence, including fighting, looting, and bloodshed. Quick question that I should ask. MLK received the Nobel Peace Prize for his advocacy of nonviolence, yet violence resulted after his death. Why did some black Americans respond that way? Well, they were angry. They were mad. Hate. Eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. They felt like they needed revenge for what had happened to their great leader, MLK. Well, another question that might be asked is, how did the rioting hurt the civil rights movement? After all, with MLK being assassinated and now these people turning violent, how did the average American see all of this taking place, and how did they respond? Well, they're going to be more hesitant to support the civil rights movement because of the violence that they're seeing instead. Well, back to politics. As the campaign continued, Kennedy began pulling ahead of McCarthy, seeming to be the favored one to go against Humphrey. But that all changed in June 1968. In Los Angeles, Robert Kennedy was assassinated by an anti-Israel Arab. Kennedy had just won the California primary and was making his way to speak to the press. A nationalist Arab shot Kennedy because of Kennedy's support of Israel. Within a period of 2 months, 2 major American leaders had died violently. Letter C. All of the men that we've just talked about are Democrats running for the election. Nixon, however, will receive the Republican nomination. And in 1968, Nixon seemed unstoppable. Although he had lost in 1960 to JFK and had lost a governor's race in 1962, he had remained in politics. In 1968, he won a series of primaries, making him the front-runner for the Republican nomination. His plan was to take the middle of the road. Nixon tried to take the middle road on political issues. This would appeal to more voters. After all, they had learned from their mistakes of the 1964 Barry Goldwater campaign that being a radical conservative was not going to win the election. So, Nixon will take the center. At the Republican convention in Miami, Florida, he beat back challenges by both liberal Nelson Rockefeller and conservative Ronald Reagan to win the nomination. Nixon campaigned with this law and order mentality, sensing the dismay of the American public over the violence that racked the country. Nixon hit a sympathetic nerve when he called for law and order and a firm response to anarchy. One of the biggest boosts to Nixon's message was the contrast provided by the Democratic Convention. Let's talk about that. Humphrey easily won the nomination in Chicago, but everything else was chaotic. Outside the convention, police and radical demonstrators fought it out. Inside the convention, one Democrat shouted obscenities at another Democrat, denouncing what he called the Gestapo tactics of Chicago's police. Also, as Johnson's VP, Humphrey was expected to defend the unpopular policies in Vietnam. So we can see with the Republicans, everything's going smoothly for Nixon. For the Democrats, everything seems to be in chaos. Oh, another issue that the election is going to face will be called the Wallace factor. George Wallace will run for president during this time. He ran for president. What you need to know about him is he ran under the American Independent Party. This party, also you need to know, was generally conservative and pro-segregation. As you can see, the flag behind George Wallace definitely promoting the segregation view. He sought to draw on popular discontent with the civil rights movement, urban violence, rampant immorality, rising crime rates, and the seemingly endless war in Vietnam. Wallace's political pronouncements were generally conservative, but couched in tough, pugnacious language. In his first inaugural address as governor, Wallace proclaimed, "I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny. And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever." He gained national attention in 1963 when he literally stood in the door of the University of Alabama in a vain attempt to keep black students from enrolling. In 1964, Wallace ran a protest candidacy against Lyndon Johnson for the Democratic nomination and performed well in the Indiana and Maryland primaries. If you look at page 566, there's a pink box entitled Wallace's Popular Message in the Popular Language. Please read that pink box to yourself. Once you finish, please unpause the video and we will continue. Wallace did not really believe he could win the election, but he hoped that in a three-way contest, he could win enough votes to throw the election in the House of Representatives. He was hoping to send Washington a message that there were conservative Americans that existed and that Washington can't ignore them anymore. Letter F, let's talk about the actual election. I think the picture kind of gives away the results. The phrase, "Nixon's the one," was his campaign slogan for the election. On page 566, it shows the election results that take place. Nixon received 43.4% of the popular support to Humphrey's 42.7%. Wallace won nearly 10 million votes, about 13%. But in the Electoral College, Nixon won handily, 301 to 191 to 46. The voters had repudiated Johnson's policies, but they did not give Nixon an overwhelming mandate. However, Nixon won the election of 1968. For your last quiz of the year, please make sure that you do the quiz over pages 561 to 566. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Enjoy your weekend. Remember, we've got a couple more videos that you'll need to watch next week, as well as taking the Chapter 24 test. Hope you all have a good day. Be good, do good. Bye.